everybody. It's Georgia Rose from Zencuda, and tonight I'm in my home office / studio because it's raining and I didn't want to go out. No, not really. I'm just in between a lot of events and a lot of things that are going on right now. So Bobby was kind enough to let me do a remote tonight, but we won't miss a beat. I've got so much to talk about, and it's so great to see all of you out there. So you know the drill, guys. I'm just going to share the show. And if you guys would all be so kind as to share the show with me, I would absolutely love you. We're going to start having some contests soon for people who share the show. So I'm going to get some Zencuda t-shirts made, and we're going to give those out. And then we're also going to have a free reading for anybody who shares the show. We're going to enter you for a free reading for the month of July. So share the show. I know I have people watching right now, and I want to talk. I'm going to start out talking about the astrology. So we'll do that first, and then we will talk about narcissists. That's what we're going to be talking about tonight. So I know you all can't wait for that subject because I know everybody has one narcissist at least in their life. So let's go to the astrology, but I'm going to give you guys a few minutes to, like I said, share the show. I don't know why my share button is missing, but it is. So if anybody out there can share the show to my page, I would love you for it. And it's also showing a guest that we don't have on tonight. Get that off the screen, please. And yeah, I don't know. I don't have a share button. So I don't know what to tell you guys. So I guess only people who go into Strong Island Television are going to see the show tonight. So, oh, here's my share button. It just came back up. I guess there was a delay. Okay. So boy, the astrology is really making everything even more hyper than it's been. Going to share. Okay. So first of all, we've got so much stuff going on that's kind of hyper right now because we've got the South and North Node in Scorpio and Taurus. North Node is in Taurus, South Node is in Scorpio. So what does that mean? Well, it means everybody's shit is coming to the surface. And so that's why there's a lot of trauma in the world right now. We're seeing a lot of people stuff's coming to the surface they don't want to deal with, so they're acting out. I was actually in traffic Friday and I couldn't even believe the amount of accidents that I saw and just people, road raging, flipping the bird at each other. It was really, really hyper. I was so glad to get home. So we're seeing a lot of that. And one of the reasons is because everyone's emotions, Scorpio likes to dig deep in order to bring things up so that you have to deal with it. So if there's situations that have been happening, I'd say probably since springtime, they're going to get a little more amplified until about a year from now. And those things usually come to the surface in order for us to deal with them. If you find yourself getting angry about something, or you find yourself in a relationship, for instance, with somebody who's angry, it's happening because it needs to be addressed. And when we clamp those things down and sit on them, it leads to more problems. So every once in a while, the universe has a transit that makes the emotions come to the surface so that we deal with them. And once we deal with it, we don't ever have to deal with it again. We heal it. That's it. We move on. So the South Node in Scorpio is definitely doing that now. And the other thing that's going on is we do have a new moon coming in at 7 degrees of Cancer. That's happening actually tomorrow. And I talked about that a little bit on my page. If you guys want to look at that post, it was a couple of days ago. And it actually was very detailed about, for instance, why the astrology is the way it is right now compared to the new moon that's coming in. It wasn't surprising at all for me that we had Roe versus Wade come in, because that decision come down, because we have a lot of things going on with this new moon in Cancer that's really symbolic of that. Cancer energy is the mother, relationships with the mother-child, and it's also very heartfelt, passionate things. And that new moon coming in is also going to be right up against Black Moon Lilith. Black Moon Lilith is a planet, a moon, that actually is very fierce, feminine energy. So I wouldn't be surprised if we did see some protests that might get a little ugly about this Roe versus Wade issue. Now, I'm not a political show and I don't have any politics to discuss about it. I'm just telling you how the astrology is playing it all out. So I want to go to the chart right now and share my screen with you guys and just show you a chart of the moment so that maybe you can understand all this a little bit better. And when you look at this chart, you'll see over here where this moon is. Right now, the moon is in Gemini, right next to Mercury, right? We've got Mercury, the moon, and also what else is in Gemini right now? Venus is actually in Gemini right here. So Venus and Mercury and the moon are all in Gemini. And what that does is when the moon is in Gemini, it makes us sometimes a little bit quick to think, and especially with our words. So you really want to watch your words this next day or so until that moon goes into Cancer. And that energy has been around for a couple of days. The other thing Venus in Gemini does is it makes us a little scattered in our romantic relationships. It can also make us a little bit scattered and kind of, bouncing from one thing to the next. When we think about what we want, what we desire as far as possessions go and things like that, it's also very indicative of why the stock market's been a little volatile with those planets there. But this moon is actually going to travel into the sign of Cancer here. And you see this symbol, which is Cancer energy. It's like the Cancer in the zodiac. When the moon comes in here, it's actually going to meet up with the sun. And that's why we have a new moon. When the moon and the sun are together in the sky, that's a new moon. And so you'll see this little thing that looks like a little sickle or something here with a moon on it. That's Black Moon Lilith. And that is going to really play into this new moon energy. As this moon travels close to the sun, they both move into 7 degrees of the sign and then touch on Black Moon Lilith, which is going to be very slow moving and stay at 8 degrees. It creates an energy of huge feminine power. It's the divine feminine, it's mothering energy. It's also, as far as Black Moon Lilith goes, very possessive energy. Lilith was the biblical character who was Adam's first wife in the Garden of Eden. And she was cast out because she refused to be subservient to Adam. She felt that men and women should be equal. And so when she was cast out, she was also left behind some children. So the myth goes that Lilith became very demonic almost in her anger and passion to protect her children. So that's a mother's love, right? And a lion protecting her cubs. And we're going to see a lot of that kind of energy play out. So it's really interesting that this is all playing out against the framework in the three-dimensional world of Roe versus Wade. Can't make this stuff up. The astrology always has an impact on what's going on in our world. A couple of other things come to mind on this chart. We have Pluto down here in the sign of Capricorn. This symbol is Capricorn over here in the green Capricorn symbol here. And you'll see a big P here with the number 27. That means that Pluto is at 27 degrees in the final degrees of Capricorn, where it's been for several years. And it will take a couple of years to come out of Capricorn. But in the final degrees, it's also retrograde now. And that means that it's really bringing us lessons about structure and what we need to rebuild, the structures in our life that are crumbling right now. And we see that all around us in our governments, in our school systems, in the Supreme Court decisions, in all kinds of things, the financial markets. So Pluto brings around destruction in order to build something new. Pluto is the planet that has the moniker of something has to die to be reborn. That's Pluto energy, and we've had that around for a real long time. But in the last degrees of a sign, it's going to start to get even heavier. And then if you move over here to the Aquarian energy, right here where you have this Saturn in 24 degrees, that is very symbolic. Saturn is our place where we want to take responsibility for the things in our life that we take for granted or neglect. If we're not good with money, for instance, and we're not good with a budget, or we're not good in telling people how we really feel, or whatever is our restriction, that's the planet Saturn. In Aquarius, it's there to show us a new way to do things. So you putting all this together yet? That's why we're in the climate we're in. And then what's adding to that is if you skip over here to Aries, we've got Jupiter at 7 degrees of Aries. Now remember, this new moon, the sun, and the Black Moon Lilith are at 7 Cancer. So this creates a conversation between this beautiful Jupiter and Aries energy, which is powerful energy. It's going to amplify that new moon, but it's in a fire sign. So that's another thing that will cause maybe some sudden eruptions. But if you use that energy for assertion, there's something you want to accomplish in your career or in a relationship or around your home or a project, that's beautiful energy to do that with, especially since Cancer is going to connect our heart to it. But it also does sometimes bring out some eruptions. We have Mars also in the sign of Aries right here. And in between them is the planet Chiron, which is the wounded healer. What that means is sometimes we have to face trauma in order to find compassion and love. So when you put all this in a blender and you take it all out, what it probably means is that this new moon coming in tomorrow may bring us some eruptions and some volatility, but at the same time, true meaning of it is healing. And in order to bring our hearts to a space where we're connecting our hearts to what our thoughts are, instead of just over relying on our mind, because that's what we've been doing for a lot of months now, over relying on this mind to bring us where we want to go. When we all know that life is only truly experienced when you feel it. It can't be experienced from your mind. You have to experience it with your heart and soul. So that leads me into tonight's conversation about narcissists. And so when we look at our lives and our relationships, I'm sure plenty of you have relationships that you've got narcissists in your life. And if you have any conversations or questions or comments to put in about the astrology, please do. I'm going to be watching the comments throughout the whole broadcast and saying hello to people and stuff like that. So the moon coming in tomorrow is going to make us have a lot of feels, right? It's going to make us kind of, our spidey senses heighten, because in Cancer is a very heartfelt energy. If anyone has a Cancer energy in their life, or they're a Cancer, you know that sometimes you can be a little moody, because when you think of the crab is, which is a sign of Cancer, the crab is a creature that lives based on the tides, the ebb and flow of the tides. And that's why they can be moody. That's the archetype of it. Cancers also carry their home on their backs. So if you say the wrong thing or you don't do what they want to do, sometimes they can go off in their little shell and be a little moody that way. So that's the kind of energy that this new moon brings in. And what you want to do in an energy like that is really make sure that you don't go into the shell, but that you find your way to be more heartfelt and drop into those beautiful emotions that the Cancer energy is going to be able to heighten and bring to you. And you want to do that in a way that's very loving and kind, because this energy, especially with Mercury and Gemini, can definitely give you a war of words. But this new moon also brings us the opportunity to look at relationships a little bit differently, because we have all this new energy with Saturn in Aquarius and Jupiter in Aries. It's going to bring a lot of new things in a very aggressive way. So watch those words. But the higher octave of that energy is that we're able to see things in a different perspective. And that's why I wanted to talk about narcissists tonight, because what I'm finding is there's this whole framework happening in the world, this whole energetic push and perception, where I find, and I don't know if you guys do too, but I find that people are really working hard to bring us into their reality and kind of pressuring us, manipulating us to leave our own realities behind. And that's what narcissists do. And I'm not a doctor. I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist or even a social worker or a clinical worker or anything like that. I am strictly speaking from experience on this broadcast. And I'd love to hear your experiences and your comments too. I'm not seeing my comments. I hope they come on. Oh, here they are. Okay. Got it. I was swiping and I couldn't get them. So got a lot of people on there, which I'm glad about. So narcissists sometimes can be very subtle. Like I said, I'm not a psychiatrist, and there's not like this scale for narcissists, I don't think, but I always feel like there should be a spectrum because I feel like some people just have a little tendency, and then the others were like full-blown crazy, like crazy making narcissists, and they really have some kind of a psychological issue. And then there's people who just are brats and like to get their own way, So I don't know how that's determined and how people are labeled, and I'm not here to label anybody, but I do want to talk about some of the patterns that we find that cause trauma in our lives. And the first thing that I want to bestow is a myth that I hear a lot in the spiritual world, where people talk a lot about empaths and narcissists. And they're like, almost the empath will almost be a little bit egoic, and they'll be like, well, I'm an empath and I, have the feels and I feel everything and I'm so giving and loving that the narcissists are attracted to me, right? And I don't really think that's true. And this is just my beliefs. You are all open to your own beliefs, and I'd love to hear them, because maybe I'll have a different, take on things after listening, and vice versa. That's what this included community is all about. I don't really think that's true. I think we have that a little backwards. And I think that's almost like a little bit of spiritual bypassing. Well, I do think it's true that the pathology of an empathic person and a narcissist person oftentimes meet, and that's the combustion. I don't think that narcissists necessarily are attracted to empaths because you're so loving. I think that narcissists are attracted to damaged people. And I think most empaths, myself included, are people who've been damaged. We've been abused or abandoned or have had really tough times with some things in our childhood or maybe later on in life or whatever. And we've got this little damaged piece of us that makes us susceptible to a narc. And all of this happens not at the forefront and the height and the surface of your emotion in your head. No one wakes up in the morning and says, I'm damaged and I'm going to attract a narcissist. And the narcissist, by the same token, narcissists get so much hate and so much abuse just because of their habits. And yet we're so empathic about other psychological disorders. And I feel that narcissists sometimes are completely clueless about what they do. And when you really think about that, and I also believe that most narcissists are pretty incurable. I think they maybe can change some habits, but I think it's really hard to rewire a narc. I mean, it's hard enough to rewire us empaths, right? So narcissists get a lot of hate and they get the toxic people label. And so people who become spiritual or start to really embrace their empathy or are truly an empath and they find themselves to be so, all of a sudden the solution is I'm clearing the toxic people, I'm setting new boundaries, and that is my solution. But it's not the solution. You're going to keep attracting narcissists until you heal the damaged part of you. And the reason why I say most empaths are damaged, and I say that whether it's past, present, or you're working on it, I don't say that as a derogatory label. We're all have damage in some way, you know. The reason why I say that is because if you think about the life lessons that we all endure, in order to have compassion, you have to have felt pain. Unless you felt pain, you really don't know what compassion or empathy is, all right? And empathy isn't sympathy. Sympathy is, oh my God, I'm so sorry that you're like that. Empathy is feeling someone. So sympathy can be, you know, a demonstrative thing. It can be wordy. You can also feel it. But empathy is you feel it. You know how someone feels and you empathize with that. You jump in their boat, you know? And so when we are that type of person, we only get that deep emotional feeling from having felt something painful in our life. That's the way it works. So people who felt pain and trauma and don't realize it and don't know that they have these neural pathways, because it is part of the brain, we are conditioned to want to take care of, help someone. And we're also conditioned to think that we need to be taken care of. Most empaths, in my experience, and again, I'm including myself, have had damage, whether you're either abandoned, some kind of abandonment, even if it's not a physical abandonment, an emotional one, you are abused in some way, isolated, or somehow made to not develop an identity the way that you should. Don't have a healthy identity. And so there's a part of us, or a part of you, or part of we, that really wants deep down inside that person that's going to make it okay. And that's damaged. You're damaged when you think that, because no one is supposed to do that in your life. You know, if you hid in closets as a kid, you're not supposed to drag someone in your closets to feel better. You're supposed to get out of the damn closet. And then the person that's really healthy will find you. That's the relationship between empath and narcissist. The empath wants somebody who's going to make it better and make it okay. And narcissists want to control someone. Match made in heaven. Narcissists defend themselves just like the empath defends themselves by freezing, by flight, by fright. The empath defends their self by wanting to always be in control of the situation. It's no different from anyone else who's in pain. And yet we hate them. We blast them all over social media. We want to excommunicate them from our lives and everything. Now, I'm not saying you should go out and start a Salvation Army for narcs or help every narc in the world, but I am suggesting to change the focus. And that's what tonight's broadcast is about, is change the focus from wanting to fix the narc, wanting to change the narc, wanting to pour out your feelings to the narc, because when he sees how hurt you are, he's going to change. How could anyone want to hurt me so badly? He doesn't. He loves me. It's not going to happen because you're focusing on someone other than yourself. And that's what empaths do. And it's the way that empaths do that, they don't heal. Until the healer heals themselves, right? Well, Mr. and Mrs. Empaths out there, myself included, you're going to keep going into this cycle of abuse, setting boundaries, abuse, setting boundaries. Oh, I really love them, but da, 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 da. You've got to develop an identity where you are working on your own self. And you take that part of the equation out that says, but I need this to be fixed in him or her or mom or dad or sister or whoever the narc is in your life. It doesn't work that way. When you heal yourself and what's in you, then that narcissistic personality will probably fade into the background because now you're no longer a source of their supply. Just like when we're damaged, or people, generally speaking, now are damaged, whatever our pathology is to fix that part of us, we look for it in the other, whether that's someone that you want to have security because you find someone who's a good provider, or you find someone who's just a very stable person, even though they're really boring, and you're with them because that makes you feel like you're going to be taken care of. Or maybe you want someone who's really spontaneous and adventurous because you constantly have to be entertained rather than dealing with yourself. Or maybe you have your worth put in someone else and you always have to date the looker because that is how you value your own worth when you're with someone who's really beautiful. Whatever is your medicine, if you're putting it on the other, that's why you're attracting that narc, because narcs are the opposite of that. They heal themselves by taking from you. Empaths heal themselves by giving, because we think if we give you something that we're lacking, we're going to get it, right? Maybe you have a low self-esteem, so if you date the good-looking person, you feel better. Maybe you're not really good at holding down a job and you have anxiety, so the partner who is really stable in his job is the one for you, because you're trying to heal that. You're trying to plug that hole. The narcissist plugs that hole by taking from you, where the empath will go into that relationship with the person who's financially stable and want to give to that person so they're getting something. Neither one is really good. Neither one is really healthy, because until you don't have those holes to plug, you're not going to be 100% partner for someone. And a real relationship isn't 50-50. A real relationship is 100-100. Boom, you're dynamic. That's where you want to be. So we got to change the energy of, disparaging the narc, insulting the narc. Oh, I'm cutting that person out of my life. We'll do that if you want, but you still got to fix yourself. At the end of the day, you have to be able to eat alone at your own table. So a couple of things I'm going to go into tonight, and I want to look at the comments. I know this is a hot topic. And Mickey Delaney says cancer sucks. No, it doesn't. Well, cancer, the illness sucks, but not cancer is a sign. So couple of ways that you can heal from that trauma. And I'm going to go into exactly how this dynamic works, and please, if you have questions, comments, definitely put them in there. And if we have to do a part two to this, we'll do it next week too. So you're in a relationship with a narc. Maybe you're the empath. I'm going to say probably people watching are not saying I'm the narc, because narcs never know they're narcs. Narcissists don't know they're narcissists. And if you a lot of times when we're younger and we think, oh, I have to tell him everything I just learned, because when he sees this, he's not going to want to be a narcissist. Yeah, that doesn't work. If you bring out those things to someone who is in a narcissistic defense pattern, they will shame you, blame you, tell you everything that's wrong with you, and make it all your fault. They are never going to take any accountability for anything that they ever do, or anything that they ever have done, or the ways they are. The narcissist's life depends on acting normal after they act out. That is why usually after they act out or have an argument with you or argue at you, they will ghost you. They will not talk to you for a couple of days. They will abandon you. That's how they get control back. They're terrified of any situation where they're out of control. If you try to tell them that, they will attack you. So I don't suggest you listen to this broadcast or read a few books and then say, I've got to talk to this person. I know they're a narcissist. They don't understand. They will not understand that. Don't do it. It's a waste of time. So first couple of things that will really help. There's a lot of books out there. There's a lot of YouTube guys that talk a lot about narcissism. One is a doctor that is a therapist. He has a big YouTube channel called Surviving Narcissism. His videos are great, really practical, and really will help you heal. There's also a book that I use in my own life, and it is called The Body Keeps the Score. The doctor is by Bessel van der Kolk, MD. You can get it on Amazon. You can even download it on your Kindle. If you're in some kind of pain or trauma because of someone who is a narcissist, I would download it tonight and start doing your work. I do that book, and I'm on my second time to do it. And I actually keep a trauma journal of when I do it, when I read that book, because it really shows me where I need to heal things. This is not work for the faint of heart. So how does a narcissist, what is a narcissist? What do they do? So a narcissist usually is someone that is, you're not able to talk to them. They don't really usually have conversation with you. They probably did when you were first dating them, if it's a dating situation. Or sometimes they will have conversation with you when they're gaslighting you, which means they're trying to make you believe things that aren't really true, or they're trying to bring you into their reality. An example of that would be you're in a car with someone, you're had a really nice trip, and then on the way home, the narcissist is driving and they start to, you know, really get aggravated in traffic and flipping people the bird and driving a little erratically, nothing too crazy, but enough to make you a little nervous. And when you call them out on their driving, maybe you get home and you say, you know, you're kind of a little aggressive behind the wheel. Their answer is going to be, you're crazy. What are you talking about? I wanted to get you home. You're the one who said that you wanted to get home, right? So what did they do? They labeled you, they called you a name, they insulted you, they shamed you, and then they blamed you. That is typical of a narcissistic response, because they can't go into a place. They would rather die 10,000 painful deaths than ever be in a place where they think they did something wrong. They can't do it. They just can't do it. This doesn't mean that they're ugly, horrible people. It means that they have a psychological disorder. They're damaged, just like all of us have some kind of damage. So when you start to think of it that way, that should also help you maybe have a little compassion for them, more for yourself, because you don't want to go into that, oh, I can help them and save them. You're not going to do that. But it'll help you with the anger that you have for them when you realize that it's not personal. Even when they're calling you an F and B and the worst words in the book, it's not personal. It's just they have to push you out. They have to lash out. They're like on a slippery slope looking for control. They're in so much pain, but they don't know it because that pain can't come to the surface. They've got to really keep putting it down. It's a crazy way to live. And so it's a crazy way to try and have a relationship with someone. So that book will help. Knowing that this is a psychological disorder, if someone really, you think they have this, will also help, because it takes the sting out of it for you. It did for me anyway. I used to at one time, and I was, raised in a household with narcissists, and my self-esteem was such that I was already damaged. So when I met people who were narcissists in my life in relationship, when they, did something as simple as what I just described with a driving thing, and, then they'd be like, oh, you're crazy, whatever. I would be crushed. I would be crushed, because I would go home and be like, am I really did I overreact? I guess it wasn't that bad, And I could sit here and tell you stories for days where things like that happen. And that's very simply put an example of, and I'm sure if you're watching this program and you have someone like this in your life, you'll have big and small examples, from huge things to little things, but it's all an example of the narcissist's main drive is to make you be brought into their reality. Your reality becomes secondary. It doesn't exist. You know what happened in that car. You know they were driving erratically. Maybe you looked over at the odometer at one point and they were doing 85 and tailgating someone. But now, after that little brief conversation, you're like, yeah, maybe I was overreacting. Maybe it really wasn't that bad. I need to calm down. Maybe it's just my anxiety. Now you're in their reality. And that's what the narcissist wants. They're comfortable when they're in control. They can't be in your reality. They have to be in their own, and they have to be in control. And it has to be something that also makes them feel good. It can't be something that they need to take accountability for, that they're wrong about, or whatever. The other thing a narcissist will do to someone who has empathy or compassion, or is a very heartfelt person, an empath, is if that line of argument doesn't work and you still are sticking to your guns and saying, no, I think you were really a little aggressive. I think you really needed to calm down. Sometimes I get scared behind the wheel. If them saying those things that they said to you, oh, you're crazy, oh, it was nothing, oh, you're overreacting, doesn't work, then they go into a victim mentality. And they'll say, oh, fine, I'm a bad driver. You always criticize me about my driving. I can't please you. Next time, why don't you drive if you think you're so good at it? Because, you made me feel like a piece of shit. I got you here in one piece. I did all the driving today and you don't even thank me. Yeah, now they're the victim. And now you feel like a piece of crap. So either way, they're going to drag you across your borderline, across your boundary, into their reality. And what happens is this is systematic abuse, because it keeps chomping you down and chomping you down. And you keep giving in, and you keep giving in until finally, if you're with that person a long time, and if it's a family member, you've grown up with them, or maybe they've parented you for your whole life, pretty soon you don't have an identity because you're living in their reality and you don't even have one of your own. When I ended a very long marriage, I fell completely apart. And I thought it was because he was the love of my life. No, it was because my whole identity was through him. And I had to build it back from the dirt, So I speak from experience about narcissism, but it wasn't about him. It was about me and what I needed to do to become a whole person. So the first thing is the trauma. You have to realize that the trauma isn't just, emotional. It's also physical, even if no one's ever laid a hand on you, because your body is holding that trauma somewhere. It's in headaches, stomach aches, feelings of not really being here, no emotion. If you feel dead inside, that's also your defense mechanisms, because the 4 defense mechanisms that humans do is freeze, flight, fright, and then fawn is the 4th one, which I'll get into in another broadcast. But that freeze, that's an animal instinct. Sometimes if you're in the jungle and a predator comes and you're an animal, you freeze, right? You deaden yourself. You pretend, you play dead so you don't get hurt. So if you feel like I'm dead inside, I have no emotion, it's probably because you've been abused to the point where you are afraid to even feel anything, because you're going to get beat down. You're going to get told something wrong with you. You're going to get made to feel insecure. You're going to question yourself. So the answers don't lie in the other person. The answers don't lie in ridding your place, your life and your home and your place from toxicity. You can do that, but more people will just come that are exactly like those people, until you sit with yourself and you start to create healthy boundaries and do the work. And believe me, for me, this has been a lifelong thing. I still am trying to learn some of these things and build myself back, but I'm a much healthier and much wiser and much more healthy, loving person, loving people in healthier ways than I ever have before. So it's a really cool freedom. So I want to give you guys some things that worked for me, and maybe they'll work for you. So if you're out there. And so the first thing is I do yoga, and I don't do yoga, the residual of yoga and the cream for yoga, the cream on the coffee for yoga is that, yeah, it tones me up and it gives me stamina and it keeps my weight down and it makes me not crave things in life and it brings my head up to date. But the other thing with yoga, and when I walked into a yoga studio 11 years ago, when I was, like I just described before, I didn't even have an identity. I was building myself back from the dirt. And I walked into a yoga studio, and what yoga did for me was it aligned myself with the feeling of relaxation. Because at the end of every yoga, they do something called shavasana, where you lay on your mat and you're just in a guided meditation or in a meditation for a few minutes. And what that did was it taught my physical body and my mind what relaxation, what mindfulness felt like. And so I didn't know what that felt like. I was so keyed up and so on high alert all the time about other people's feelings and emotions that I would literally walk in a room, and if someone was in a bad mood or I picked up an energy of them not being happy, I immediately started going through my mind, what did I do? Are they mad at me? Did I say something? And replaying the last conversation I had in my mind and thinking about oh, what did I do? What did I do? What can I do what can I do to fix this? This person's not feeling good. I never was grounded in myself. everything was about something or somebody else. So what yoga did for me in that 45 minutes in that studio and in those last few minutes on the mat was put me in myself. And that was a fresh start for me. It was a place of 0 point energy that I could build something from, just to actually be with myself. And then that started to build up into, how do I feel about certain things? Is something feeling good in my body? Like, where am I feeling something in my body? Even if I was just, having coffee with a girlfriend, and I'd start to observe the conversation. If I started to feel nervous or anxious, what was she just talking about? Why is that affecting me? Where is it affecting me in my body? And that gave me a really good gauge of where I had trauma and where I had things to work on. So my first exercise in coming back and building back from narcissistic abuse was starting to feel myself and understand what that even was. Like, to feel your body against the ground of a mat and know the universe had me supported. That was like so profound to me at the time, and beautiful. And I hadn't experienced that feeling, and I don't know if ever. And I felt safe there. And so I had to teach myself what safety was, because I had really never had it in my life. And that's why when we're damaged that way, the narcissist radar, their energetic pathology, will find us, because we're the most susceptible to conforming to their program. We're the most susceptible to just doing it the way they want, because we don't want to be fearful. We don't want to be yelled at. We question ourselves so much that we become the pawn. I like to envision that as a cat with a, you ever see a cat with a toy and they're batting it all over the floor? That's what we become to a narcissist. They're just going to keep, no, go over here now, no, do this. It's crazy making, but we allow it because we're damaged, not because we're empaths. That's part of why we were damaged to begin with, because the universe wanted us to learn compassion and be empathic. But the narcissist doesn't just find us because of that. The narcissists find us because we're damaged and we give into their wants and needs. So that was the first thing, was mindfulness. And for me, yoga helped, meditation helped. And I know a lot of people say, I can't meditate. If you can breathe, you can. Just take time to just be with yourself. You need to feel yourself in your body and then in your mind. And when you start to do this, I guarantee it's going to be hard. It should be really simple to lay on the floor for a minute and feel yourself, right? It's not, because what starts to happen is your feelings start to come to the surface, and you got to deal with it. You got to deal with it. This is not for the faint of heart. This is the beginnings of creating warriors when you do that. And then the next thing that you want to do after that is really think about agency. And when I talk about agency, I don't mean like a secret agent. I mean, who is in control of you? And you're going to start to observe that more and more. And now conversations are going to take on a different connotation, and you're going to be able to spot manipulation. Once you start to really lower your energy level and be with yourself a little bit every day, even if it's just 2 or 3 minutes, if you can't just turn off every device, no noise, no music, nothing, and just sit in a chair and feel yourself, that's because you're really damaged. And somewhere along the line, your neurotransmitters in your brain is in so much fear and pain that you can't be with yourself. You've got to fix it if you want to live a beautiful life. So sit in that chair in silence. Even if you can only do it for 2 minutes to begin with. Do something every day with yourself until finally you're walking around the block, you're taking long walks, you're riding your bike, you're doing whatever. That's agency. That is control. That is you having complete agency and sovereignty over yourself. And when you start to do that in little bits and pieces, then those narcissistic people in your life can no longer manipulate you, because you're stronger than that. You're rewiring the brain. Now, I'm going to tell you, that's a great place to start, is what I'm saying helped me. But you are not going to be able to come back from this kind of abuse and conditioning and wiring yourself. You have to have someone help you. You either need a therapist, a psychotherapist, a social worker, a grief counselor, someone. You cannot do it alone, because you have to rewire the brain. Our brain is a mechanism that's triggered by the way narcissists go into their self-defense modes. Because our self-defense modes have taught us to conform. If you were raised by narcissists like I was, you conform because you know something really bad is going to happen if you don't. So now when you grow up and have narcissists in your life, you just do it. You get with the program because that's the way you've been conditioned and you don't even know you're doing it. So you've got to rewire that brain. You need help to do that. When you start to read that book about the body holding score, that's what it's about. It's really about the parts of the brain that are completely relying on those fight or flight mechanisms, those freeze mechanisms, those deadening the emotions to get by mechanisms. They're in your brain. You have to rewire them. If you feel very far away, if you feel disoriented, if you feel like you're lonely, even though there's people in the room, that's also part of this. That's also, you feel out of it because you're putting yourself out of it in order to live your life. You're putting yourself out of it in order to deal with the trauma of the narcissist tendencies in your life and the abuse of that. You are lovable. That's the second thing. When you finally are able to sit with yourself, even for a minute or two, I definitely would start to make sure that you're telling yourself that I am lovable and I will always love myself and I will take care of you. I've gotten you this far. And those are the kind of things you have to start telling yourself. Because changing a boundary, fighting someone, arguing with someone is not going to do anything unless you know who you are first and what you want first. And it can't be done in anger because that's just another mechanism that's going to screw up your life, screw up your brain. It's going to be more of the same. So you really want to make sure that you go into these feelings of compassion that are your birthright and have them for yourself. The other thing that I want you to know is that a lot of times narcissistic tendencies and narcissistic people, they come from a place oftentimes where they make attachments based on abuse or based on criticism. One of the things I noticed when I started to read about this was, in my family, it wasn't so much that we complimented each other or really validated each other. It was always ribbing, and it was like good-natured, sarcastic ribbing. Or like I would bring home 100 on a test and my father would say, 100? What, they didn't have any extra credit? So, well, narcissists think those things are funny. They're not to someone who's trying to develop. They're not to a child who's trying to develop a self-esteem or a self-worth or to understand boundaries. Like you walk away confused when you're 7 and 8 years old with that remark because you went into it thinking 100 was a good thing and now maybe it's not. So where is reality? Where is the border or the boundary? You don't know anymore. And so maybe you become that child who has to overachieve because you trying to find the finish line, but the narc keeps moving it. And that's what happened to me. In 4th grade, I remember being hysterical over 20 pages of math homework because I became such a little overachiever that they put me in accelerated learning classes. And I couldn't keep up because they kept moving the finish line, So there's all different kinds of things that we have, but I guarantee you that ache in your left knee is probably the kid who punched you in the nose in the playground because that's how it works. So some people form attachments with those kind of things and they grow up to be sarcastic and they think it's funny and it's really not funny because that's the way you were conditioned in your families of origin. So a lot of times narcissists form attachments by doing that. So a good example is, you meet someone and you really like them and maybe you get a chance to observe them with their kids and they say things and you're like, oh, that was a little harsh. But you see that kind of pattern. That's the defense mechanism of not showing emotion. If there's an emotion in the room, shut the door. We don't want it in here. So that's oftentimes how it is. So a lot of times in these relationships that we form with family members and loved ones and partners with narcs, a lot of times what will happen is these are the kind of symptoms of this disorganized thing that will happen in your life. Your life becomes completely disorganized. And the first thing is if you find yourselves unable to regulate your emotions, Like sometimes you don't feel anything when you should, and other times when you really should be kind of like in check, you start to get really emotional. That's because your brain doesn't know how to react, because you've been dragged kicking and screaming into others people's reactions that aren't yours. So now the mind and the body doesn't really have the right triggers. And these is just from my own personal experience. Strong fear about being abandoned by someone, even though you probably don't even really want them in your life. That goes back to some kind of childhood abandonment, and abandonment doesn't have to be physical. It could be just, someone ignored you. Feeling helpless and ineffective a lot. You'll feel that way in these relationships a lot, because like when I was a kid, they kept moving the finish line. I didn't know what was good enough. I felt helpless. You'll feel ineffectual because a narcissist will never give you a compliment. You can cook a gourmet meal. You can learn all their favorites. You can do something beautiful to surprise them. You can freshly paint a room. They'll come in and find the spot you missed. That's what they thrive on. They can't give a compliment. They can't have someone have the upper hand. They are very uncomfortable with that, and they cannot allow it to happen. You may have difficulty opening up, bonding, and trusting other people because you don't have a sense of security. You're not secure with the person in your life that's conditioned you this way. And there's many, many things. Also, the pattern of narcissists is they will love bomb you in the beginning, where everything seems really perfect. So, and this is true even with siblings, where they'll be your best friend one day and then not. And I think that that's, part of it. They're just they're like a heat-seeking missile. And a lot of empaths have a hole, and they want to just land that missile in there, So that's what it is. So I'm going to read some comments, and I know this has gone very quickly actually for me tonight, but we'll be doing another show about this. We'll do part 2 next week, because I really want to have you guys call in and see what you want. Sarah says she's feeling the Lilith energy. Yeah, I think that's very prominent right now, especially when you watch the news with a lot of these protests with Roe v. Wade. Karen Morena says, I'm too easy on the narcissist. I'm not. I've healed a lot of pain from narcissistic abuse in my life. I don't really think I'm too easy on them. I think what I'm trying to really get across is that a lot of people vilify them. And while they can do some egregious things, they really are sick. There's something in them that they don't always see what they do. And the other thing is, there is some people who are really, really, deep narcissists. I don't know what the clinical term is. I'm just speaking from my own life, where they will be really cruel. I mean, they get off on it. And those are people who are very, very sick, very badly damaged. And I think that the worst thing you can do is cry in front of those people, allow them to see you really in a helpless way. Well, they will drive you to that point. If you allow them to see you that way, it will be used against you. And they like that. It makes them feel powerful. It's part of the sickness, I think. Elaine said she lost me. I don't think anybody else did. Joan says, thanks for sharing. Will be a blessing, a good nature ribbing or like. Yes, and sometimes it is, definitely. But I think sometimes people go a little too far with it. If you see someone who's always sarcastic and always, going for the jugular, there's something a little wrong there. That's somebody who wants to hurt people. The other thing I wanted to bring, I'm just going to look at my notes. You guys know me and my notes. The other thing I was going to say is part of this, and I don't want to focus on the narcissist. I want to focus more on the healing of it. And part of that healing is really, really about taking responsibility for ourselves. And that's really part of being Zenkuda and being in the Zenkuda community. Is we're not, spiritual bypassing here. We're doing the work. This is a warrior community. What we do is not easy in our lives, but we have the eye on the ball. The ball is full potential. You can see that Zenkuda with the Z ball. You got the eye on that full potential, living life completely aligned, free of other people's influences over what really is our own sovereignty. And when you think about that, what happens is some of that need to be taken care of that we got to take responsibility for that. Because oftentimes we have that need to be taken care of in very subtle ways. And we need to really make sure that we're taking care of ourselves. And I don't say that in like a woman's lib or I don't need anybody kind of way for men and women. I'm saying that in a way that you are whole enough to bring a whole person to everything you do in life, whether that's relationships or something you love to do that you're passionate about, or something that is very heartfelt to you. You're not bringing a damaged individual to those things. You're not bringing someone who's afraid to trust and be all in whatever the situation is, even if it's a group setting. That's the goal. And that's why healing this trauma is so important. And like I said, the astrology right now, we have so much trauma being played out in the world that you see this everywhere. Just looking at my notes, don't underestimate that freeze, that feeling of not feeling anything. That is that freeze that we all get. So the answer is not to get rid of people. The answer is to heal ourselves. Although getting rid of certain people may be part of your overall plan, that's great. But I also know that if you do it in anger and it's not resolved in your own heart, you'll never resolve it with the narcissist, but you have to resolve it in your own heart. And you can do that without them being present. You can do that without a confrontation. It's all about you. And so if you can do that, that's what heals the trauma, because now they're powerless over you. And they look for that hole. They look for that crack in you to put their heat-seeking missile right in there. So it's about building the identity. A couple of other things that really helped me also was being honest. I spent a long part of my lifetime just going with the flow, keeping my mouth shut, don't say anything. And then sometimes I would erupt, and say things that I really didn't even mean. So I learned to be honest in the moment and be fully present. And when something bothers me, I say it in a way that I try to be fair. I try to be loving. I know I don't always do it. We're all human, right? But I try to really think about what I'm doing first. My personal habit is, I'm letting you guys in my heart right now. My personal, not easy for me because I too was a damaged individual, but I now fully trust. I fully trust this camera right now. I'm going to do that for you guys. It's like a trust fall, right? What I do sometimes if I'm in an argument with someone or I have a narcissist, I have a lot of them around me, believe me, that come into my, energy. Sometimes what I'll do is I actually will go in physically away from them in another room or in a further away in the room with them or whatever. And I take a few minutes and I breathe into my heart and I summon my angels. And I say, angels, please help me see what I need to see right now. Please help me have understanding of this to take away my pain and the trauma of the person I'm with. But also please help me find my words so that I can really honor myself. And I do that a lot. And it's my own personal way of bringing myself into my own identity and my own power over myself and my own sovereignty. And you'll be surprised when you just say a little prayer to whatever you believe in, that suddenly you are empowered with the energy of the universe and you suddenly find the words to say to someone, I really don't like what you did and it really bothered me. And I would really love it if you didn't do that again. Or, what you're doing right now isn't good for us. And I want to step into a better relationship. So what can I do? Because I know that you doing this doesn't work for me. And I don't want you to do it anymore. So is there something you need from me in order to do that? If not, then I need you to honor me because I can't be in this energy. And then everything starts to change. And it really, really works. So do that for yourself and for others and know that you are fully aligned with the universe and you have the power to create your own life, no matter what feels right now like trauma. And next week, I'm going to do part 2. And that's going to be all about the trauma bonding and why sometimes it's so hard for us to be without the narcissist and break that tie. And especially when it's a family member and we have to do something. So I'm going to do part 2 next week. Comment below, comment this week on the page, because I really want to get a conversation going about this because I've had so much of this in my life that I think I can help you with it. So thank you so much for tuning in tonight. I love you. This is the energy that I source my life from. You can find me on Zenkuda on Facebook. You can find me on Zenkuda Official on Instagram and my website, zenkuda.com, and of course on Zenkuda on YouTube. I hope to see you all again next Monday night at 7 o'clock. And do look for me on those sites because there'll be more videos and more posts. Thanks so much, everybody. I love you all. Night.